Alright, my voice is still kind of shit, but, you know, Final Fantasy 16 is dropping tomorrow, and I have about 1 hour of sleep in me, and I wanted to make the greatest list of all time, Final Fantasy ranking, because god damn it, this series is what got me into gaming as a kid. And so as you can see, we have Final Fantasies all across the board, and they're not in order. That's my favorite type of list because then they're in order. It's a little bit boring sometimes. So we're just going to spice it up and just pick the random games. And these are supposed to be the main games, but I do see some spin-offs in there. We'll get to it, but the list is longer than what you can see here. We just can't see the entire screen. So this is Final Fantasy 1 to 15 with a couple of spin-offs from those main series. And obviously Final Fantasy 16 is not going to be on this ranking because I didn't play it and I don't even think it's on here. So it's not here. Obviously, I can't rank a game I haven't played more than the demo, which the demo was hot and spicy, as they call it. And who doesn't like hot and spicy chicken from Chinese restaurants? I think it was called sweet and sour chicken. I don't know why the fuck I called it hot and spicy, whatever. So let's start with Final Fantasy VIII, the granddaddy of all Final Fantasy games. No, it isn't. I don't know why I said that. Final Fantasy VIII is a weird game for me because it was the one I played directly after playing 7. I was really excited for this, getting a Christmas gift from my grandmother who bought this for me when I was a child, and she actually did not let me open it on Christmas because I was misbehaving and she decided to wait till the day after Christmas. Some evil ass shit. But Final Fantasy VIII was a solid game. Now, I think Final Fantasy VIII for me just never could live up to 7. I think it added too many elements that I didn't love, especially the magic system in this game of having to repeatedly use the same one to level it up. I can't remember exactly, but it was a system I didn't like that much. Also, Squall, is that how you say his name? Not a favorite design of mine and not a favorite character of mine. He's just kind of being too melodramatic. And yes, of course, if you look at Cloud, you might say the same thing, but I feel like Cloud had a reason to be, and this guy was just blah. Saying that, it was a fun game. It just followed the steps of 7. Definitely had more of a 3D feel to it, or at least trying to push that envelope a little bit more. And it was a Final Fantasy game, so it had that magical sense, but it did feel a little bit modern, kind of like 7, whereas they didn't want to go back in time like the previous games, which we'll get to soon. But yeah, overall, 8 to me was a pretty fun time, but a game that I felt just was heavily flawed. It's in the high C's for me. Like, I enjoyed it as a kid, but I had absolutely no intention to replay this game pretty much ever again. So Final Fantasy XI is the first MMO for Square Enix in terms of Final Fantasy franchise, and I spent a lot of time with this game, like a lot of time, like probably an unhealthy amount of time when this game came out on the PS2. So back in the day, PS2, you had to get an attachment to go online, and it was just the worst thing ever because it was very, very convoluted just to play an online game. And Final Fantasy XI is what I played on my PS2 online, and I played hours of it, and I enjoyed my time with it. But Final Fantasy XI was a time sinker, maybe more than almost any MMO I've ever played. Things that you had to do to achieve to get like a new class just felt a lot of luck. Now, MMOs always have that luck feature, like killing a certain amount of enemies to get something. But Final Fantasy XI kind of forced you to do it, and if you didn't, you really couldn't get too far in the end game, or even to the mid game. And also, Final Fantasy XI kind of had the competition with WoW at the time, and WoW just was a better crafted MMO, in my opinion. But Final Fantasy XI was an MMO I did enjoy when I was younger, and I played a lot of it. I think that it was just a fun time. I didn't love it, but I had a fun time, more than 8, and I would go in like the mid B's for that one. Blah, blah. So I'm going to have some controversial picks on here because everybody I feel that likes this franchise has weirder picks here and there, and Final Fantasy 15 is my weird pick. I enjoyed this game a lot. A lot of people had problems with this game. A lot of people felt it was unfinished. A lot of glitches. Whatever the reason was for them not liking this game, the combat system being a little too different, I get it. I do. I do think that it does have flaws in it. I think the pacing has issues. I think that it definitely feels like it's missing something because there's something that happens close to the end of the game, and then we kind of just rush into like 15, 20 years later, and it felt like there was a segment of the game missing for another like 5 to 10 hours. Saying that, I enjoyed my time with this game a lot. I played the shit out of this game. I played like 40, 50 hours just non-stop, just having a blast. And for that, it will always be a game that I really enjoyed. And me personally, I really like the combat system. I actually did these side quests, which aren't always things for me in RPGs anymore. I just don't have the time. I would also say the story actually took me for a surprise. Now, I did say that I felt like there was a segment missing gameplay-wise at the end of the game, but the actual what happened and the twist was pretty dark. And overall, the ending was pretty fucked up. I don't want to spoil it, but it's fucked up. I do think it's a weird game. I don't think that it's as good as it could have been, but I also don't really get most of the hate for it. I really enjoyed this game, and it's probably one of my more controversial picks of where I'm going to put it. I'm going to put it in the A, but I'm going to put it in probably the mid-A. So there are going to be games that are ahead of it, but I really had a good time with Final Fantasy 15. So Final Fantasy 5 is a weird one for me because everybody gets into Final Fantasy at different parts in their life, and there's the Final Fantasy that you first get into is probably one of your favorites, right? And so Final Fantasy 5 is a game I got into later on in life, and wasn't that great. I think for me, 5 feels like the most work on the combat system and the class system, and it had some really unique ideas, but playing it much later in life, it felt dated. I played it when I was, in my mid-20s. I think it was a PSP version, and yeah, it just didn't really gel with me. Now, it could be that I played it at a time I wasn't really wanting to play an old school RPG, or I just played more RPGs during that time that I thought were better advanced. So Final Fantasy V is probably one of the most least memorable experiences for me in the franchise. It's one that I don't particularly remember enjoying that much, or I don't even remember the story that much. And for that, I think I'm going to have to put it in the D. On the flip side, you might find it weird that Final Fantasy IV is a game that I played much later in life as well, and I really, really enjoyed it. I think the story just hooked me right away. I did play the remake that came out on I believe, the 3DS, and I think that mattered. I didn't play the original, but the remake really just got me absorbed into the story. The character designs were really cool. The class system was nice and quick and fun to learn. And just overall, this is like a very old school RPG that I can just sit back and enjoy. It's one of the only original Final Fantasies, like the 1 to 5, that I actually beat. And yeah, overall, I really enjoyed 4 quite a bit. Would I say it's one of my favorites? It's high up there, but I don't know if I'd say it's one of my favorite. But I'm going to be, again, maybe a little controversial, putting this game very high up in the A, but I think I'm going to put it behind 15 for me because 15 just kind of absorbed me more, but 4 definitely is one of my favorites. I didn't play After Story or whatever this is, but it's like the sequel, I think on the cell phone for Final Fantasy 4. Didn't play it, so let's go and didn't play. Alright, so Final Fantasy 14, I don't think there's a separation between this and like Reborn, which I'm just going to count Reborn because that's the one I played. But yeah, Final Fantasy 14, as far as an MMO, I think it is my favorite MMO of all time. I think it's the easiest to get into. It's an easy game to get into, but a steep learning curve. And that's always, to me, the best way to approach an MMO or even a game in general. It's easy to get into, but if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty, you got to learn everything about this game. But what I think I really just love about 14 is just very accessible. Like, you can just jump into parties, you can do dungeons relatively quickly. It's very easy to play with your friends. The graphics still hold up pretty well, and it's a pretty old game at this point, and the expansions just kept getting better and better. And a big thing about it is the original Final Fantasy 14, the story's decent, but the expansions only got better. Now, I never played the last one, unfortunately. I kind of fell out of the MMO feel and just don't have time. Maybe one day I'll go back. But from what I played and what I enjoyed, Final Fantasy XIV just kind of blew me away as an MMO. And one of my favorite just games last generation, playing on the PS4. And then, of course, playing a little bit on the PS5. So I'm going to put that in the S rank. Probably low S rank, because, again, I think that you do have to grind a lot to get through the beginning, which is the weakest part of the MMO. But once you get to the end game of the originals and then also the expansions, this game is stellar with an actual story that intrigued me the whole time. So 9 is going to be a weird one because I'm going to put it in didn't play. Even though I did play it, I'm going to put it in didn't play because I don't feel like I played enough. I played this game on PS1. Funny story, if you want to hear it real fast. I put it in. I played the first like 3 hours. I went to go save. And then my memory card, I don't know if you guys remember, it was like a little memory card you had to buy, full. And I was like 12, so I was about to go buy another memory card. So I was just like, fuck this game. It wasn't the game's fault, but also I wasn't really getting into it. I think it's because Final Fantasy IX kind of went back in time. And from Final Fantasy 7 and 8, which felt more like modern time mixed with fantasy, this felt like the old school Final Fantasy feel. I think some people absolutely love that. I think me, I would have to replay it, and one day I will replay it. But as it stands, it's not a game that makes me want to go and play it right away. But I'm still not going to rank it because I only played the first 3 hours. I feel like that's not enough to really rank that game. Final Fantasy 1 is kind of like Final Fantasy 5, a game I played much later. Except this one, I definitely did not like the story. I actually kind of fell asleep playing this game a couple of times. These games are just too old school for me. They don't have the charm that for some people it does. Again, it's maybe because when I got into Final Fantasy 7 was the first one that got me into it as a kid. Could be that. Again, I think a lot of people who are, you know, growing up around my age in their 30s or even 40s, I think these games might be a little too old for us, at least in my opinion. So yeah, 1, just like 5, is kind of in the D rank, not for me. On the flip side, you got Final Fantasy 7, and Final Fantasy 7 absolutely captured my heart. Now, if we're going to put remake in here, which it's not on here, even more so, I absolutely love the remake. I was very little wrong with it, in my opinion. Definitely a really nice reimagined story. That's what I want in a remake. I don't want just a paint-by-pictures remake. I like to add a little spice, something a little different, while having the heart of Final Fantasy 7. I think it did that. But yeah, Final Fantasy 7 to me still just holds a special place in my heart. Playing as Cloud, you know, back in the day, I was growing up, he looked like Gohan to me. That was the first thing I noticed with the little picture. And then I just wanted to play this game forever. But yeah, just everything about this game, from the designs, Cloud, Tifa, I mean, Sephiroth is one of the greatest designs, Barret. I mean, there's so much about this game that just captured everything I like about RPGs. The combat system was really cool. It wasn't just turn-based, it was kind of moving with the turn-based, but you got to kind of keep on your feet, otherwise you will lose the battle. The summons were just mind-blowing for me. The limit breaks, well, I was just like, this is the greatest thing I've ever played. I mean, I was 10 years old or whatever, but it was just magical. And it was multiple discs. It was a long game, and back when you're a kid and you have all that free time, that's what you want. So yeah, Final Fantasy 7, certified classic, one of my favorite games, and a very high S rank. This fucking cold, the mucus is in there, you can hear it. I know you're like, oh god, he sounds like a monster, I'm sorry. Alright, so Final Fantasy 6, again, it's me going back from Final Fantasy 7. It didn't have the same effect to me that I think people who played this before Final Fantasy 7 probably did. Saying that, it is a really great story. I'd say the best part about Final Fantasy 6 is I didn't really enjoy the combat as much as other games, but I really enjoyed the story. I think the villains are great, and I think just the cast is pretty interesting. This is a game that I feel like out of all the Final Fantasy games, I would love to see a remake of, because I feel they can add more to it, make it fresh and fun, but also have that story implemented and just expand on it. Yeah, overall, Final Fantasy 6 is very dark, but a very good game in terms of the story. Combat, it's not bad, it's just kind of basic for me. I get it very much. Those older Final Fantasy games didn't capture me the same way some people did, with the exception of 4. But 6 is still a solid game. I'm still going to put it in the B. I don't think it's the greatest game, but I think it's a solid, really good time. Alright, so we got X, X2. Yeah, that's it, right? There was just X, X2. So I'm going to talk about them both at the same time. So X is... so Final Fantasy X is definitely a game that I put a lot of hours into. It's also a game I have a lot of problems with, especially replaying it just a couple of years ago on my PS4. I think the problem with Final Fantasy X is the story tries too much. I think Titus or Titus, whatever the fuck people call him, I'm just going to call him Titus because he's a bitch. Titus's voice actor really got to me. I couldn't take a lot of the scenes serious because of the voice actor. I don't know if it's the voice actor himself, more like the dialogue that he was probably given. On top of that, I didn't really like the overall plot, and the ending just still kind of infuriates me because it's kind of stupid. It's like, who thought of this? Freddy Krueger? But saying that, the world itself was pretty magical. Seymour is a cock-sucking piece of shit, and one of the hardest bosses in the series for me. Fuck that motherfucker, but a lot of fun to kill. Overall, I also really liked most of the other cast. I really liked Yuna, Riku, Lulu. All those characters to me really worked. Aaron, like, all of those were awesome. And there are some plot points I did like with the other characters. But overall, Final Fantasy X has probably, to me, it's like jarring because it has some of the most flaws in the series for me. But at the same time, it's some of my favorite things ever. And also design-wise, the world and characters I did enjoy. So 10, I'm going to put in the B, and I'm going to put a very high B. It's probably my favorite B game of Final Fantasy. Whereas Final Fantasy X-2 is absolutely fucking ridiculous. The story is stupid as shit. It is. Come on. It's stupid. But the combat system is fucking stellar, man. If you haven't played this, the combat system is 10, but just like on crack with a lot more options and a lot faster speed. I overall really, really enjoyed the actual combat system of this game. So it's really hard for me because I think the story is just trash. But the actual combat system and designs, different costumes for each of the 3 main characters is sick. And so for that, I'm going to put it in the B too, but low B. Probably the lowest B for me. Alright, so 13 is... It's there. That's the problem with 13. It's there. It's not a horrible game. I don't think it's horrible at all. I think that it's good. I think at the time it came out, the graphics were absolutely tremendously well crafted. I mean, it looked beautiful when that game came out. You can watch my review 15 years ago. It just blew me away. On top of that, I think the combat system was trying something new. It was like an updated version of 7 in a way, but not quite there yet. I think also just the overall exploring at the end was pretty fun, and it was a very streamlined, very easy game to get into. At the same time, it was so heavy on cutscenes, I think Metal Gear Solid was like, yo, these guys are trying to fucking outdo us. And listen, I'm okay with that. If I'm intrigued by the story and I'm interested, that's great. That wasn't the case with Final Fantasy 13. The story was just really, really convoluted, and I had to actually go on Wikipedia back then just to see what the fuck was happening. Yeah, just overall, Final Fantasy 13 is that game where it's good, but not great. And I think it's honestly a C for me. High C. I'd say I probably enjoyed it more than 8 in the end, but it just doesn't reach B for me. So, Lightning Returns, I absolutely fucking hate this game. It's a piece of garbage and trash mixed in together with a little bit of horse shit on top. Yeah, just a game that I do not like. If you don't know my hatred for this game, I would put in Final Fantasy 13 3 Lightning Returns, or whatever the fuck it's called, rant, and look at my channel. It's there somewhere. I absolutely hate this fucking game. It's fucking trash. It's trash. I don't even have an F, but it's the worst Final Fantasy. Alright, so Final Fantasy 13-2. There's 3 of these fucking games, by the way, if you didn't know. 13-2 I really did enjoy, actually. I think what happened was that the story wasn't as convoluted. I mean, it's still stupid. It was space travel and time travel and all that shit. But it was just 2 characters, and I felt like their chemistry worked really well. I thought the combat system was quicker. It was like a better 13. And overall, it was just more fun to play. I enjoyed this game actually more than 13 and way more than Lightning Returns. So I'm actually going to put that in the B, but it's probably the lowest B. Yeah, I would say these 2 are probably the lowest Bs. 3, I just did not like at all. It's going to go with D, but it's better than Lightning Returns, that's for fucking sure. 2 is another one. Again, these games just, they don't work for me. I'm sorry. Some people love, 1, 2, 3, and 4, 1, 2, and 3. Not for me. These are probably the lowest Final Fantasies, to be honest. 1, 2, 3, and 5 for the original, and then Lightning Returns is worse than all of them. Alright, so we have Final Fantasy 12. Final Fantasy 12 is still regarded to me as one of the best RPGs of all time. It does have an MMO feel, so I know some people don't like that, and I get that. But for me, I think I was just intrigued by the entire world. The exploring in this game is absolutely tremendous. The scope in this game is sickening. Sickening. It can take you hours to hours just to go from point A to point B. But really, overall, I really enjoyed Final Fantasy 12 for the design. I think it's one of my favorite design Final Fantasies, up there with 7. I also think that the characters are pretty cool. I love Ash as a character design. It's probably my favorite character design in the series, or at least top 5. I also just really enjoyed the overall combat system. While it was MMO feel, it's still really fun. And I thought it had some really good challenges, especially in the later end of the game. It took me a while to beat some of these bosses, and I felt like I achieved something when I did. So yeah, Final Fantasy XII, from the story, I was intrigued. The character design, combat system, musical track, really good. The soundtrack, I really enjoyed. Yeah, Final Fantasy XII is high up there. It's my second favorite Final Fantasy game. And this is the DS like spin-off. I don't know why this is on here, but it actually wasn't bad. It was a strategy game where you move units. It's pretty fun, but it's a C. I'll probably put it above 8 though. I liked it more than 8. That's fucking bad. Anyway, that's my super duper Final Fantasy list. I know I sound kind of sick, so sorry if I didn't have the energy. I probably sound a little dour, I'm sorry. But I hope you enjoyed this list. My biggest question for you guys is, what's your ranking for Final Fantasy? You don't have to do them all, that's a lot of games. But if you want to put your top 5, or your top 5 and your worst, that's always fun. I love doing that. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this list. I enjoyed making it. And let's hope 16, hits that S rank. I have a feeling it will, because the demo, only 2 hours. But fuck, man, when I finished that demo, I was like, pre-order. But this game really just impressed me. So I think it's going to end up in that S rank. But will it be my favorite Final Fantasy of all time? Well, only time will tell. Alright, guys. So if you like this, as always, hit that like button. If you loved it, hit that subscribe button. You got more videos coming like this and everybody else.